100%. It's it's the social media in its purest form connects people based on interests. And we sometimes, I know I'm guilty of this as much as the next guy, trying to segment our worlds, right? It's like, oh, this is the work world and this is the personal world. And there's no such thing as work-life balance. It's just life. And work is a part of it, right? So insert that part of you into your work, and you'd be amazed at how much opportunity you might find in places you never thought you would be able to get to.
You are listening to And I Quote, a podcast focused on building relationships with insurance agents, brokers, their small business clients, and industry leaders. This podcast is presented by Coterie Insurance.
With your hosts, Brian Thomas, Director of Claims Experience, and Ann Boger, VP of Scaling. We will be exploring the power that connection, communication, and commitment can have on your business. Join us every Thursday for a new episode and topic that will provide key insights to help build your business, agency, and client relationships. And I quote. Welcome to And I Quote. I'm your host, Ann Boger, VP of Scaling, and today I have the pleasure of introducing you to Alex Dopazo of Dopazo & Associates located in Florida. Dopazo & Associates has been serving the state of Florida as independent insurance agents since 1997 and is committed to helping small business provide excellent service and financial security through insurance coverage. Welcome to the show, Alex.
Thank you very much for having me, Ann.
So, 1997, that's been a while.
It's
How have
been a
things
minute.
changed in that time?
Well, yeah. So I do business in Florida, which is where I like to joke around and say insurance comes to die. It's a complicated state, so things have changed quite a bit. But I think mostly what's changed, not just since '97. I mean, we've seen kind of a digital adoption. We actually got our website. We just opened our first website, or launched our first website in 1997. Simply because the first phone call I ever took about insurance, they asked me if I had one, and they hung up when I said no. Uh, and so, which was a
That's
weird thing to
interesting.
happen so far back. But I do believe in Providence, so it was a move in the right direction. And I think digital adoption was something that actually started working and helping our agency quite a bit. It post a lockdown, that has become 100%. Where we
Yeah.
were, I would say, prior to say 2019, at about a 90% adoption rate for the way we digitally do work. Now we're at a point where we haven't seen a customer in our office in over 3 years, and so
And
that's
how did
changed a
you get
lot.
into insurance? How did you get into insurance in the first place?
My dad needed free labor. That's just the truth. And so my family business was in um, clothing manufacturing ever since they came from Cuba. So my mom and my dad are both from Havana, and my grandfather came in the '60s, opened a factory here in South Florida. My father came over, worked there, and then he opened his own shop. Then, businesses change, they ebb and they flow. It's not just insurance that deals with that. And it got to a point where he wasn't adjusting the way the market was, and he needed to look at something different. Someone had told him he'd be a great insurance agent. Having worked for himself since he was 21, he didn't know anything other than to do is open an agency. So in '97, he opened the agency, and about 6 months later, he needed some help. And he looked at me. He's like, "Hey, if you don't like working with Dad, you'll at least have a license and can have a job." And I jumped on it and just happened to love the industry. He understood small business owners because he had been a small business owner. So pretty much from the get go, that's what we've done is help small, mom and pop, small business owners, 15 or less employees, um, with their insurance needs.
That's awesome. So it was a true family business. And something I've found is that once you're in insurance, you kind of never leave.
That is
Sounds
a
like
true. It is. It's
everything
something
is.
that from the outside looks so has such a negative perception, but once you're in it, you're one of two things: either a raving fan or left week one, right? So it's one of those two things that ends up happening. But insurance gives us. There's just so many options in our industry, that regardless of what your passion is, you can find a space for it, and it isn't as much paper pushing Even though there's a lot of paper to push, it definitely isn't as much paper pushing as people assume.
Yeah. So one of the things I love about, and I quote, is that we really focus on relationship building and the communities that we're in. And I know you've really taken to using video and social media as a way to connect with your community and your audience. Can you tell me a little bit about how that started?
Well, so my father and I are not the traditional knock on doors, cold calling insurance agents. In the sense of we don't really like selling like that. Because well, we just don't like it when it happens to us. And so, you kind of do the thing
Yeah.
that the other people like, right? And or that you like. And so we found that being an inbound agency was something we did from the get-go. So we would do, say in 97, we were doing a lot of mailers to get people's attention and have them call in. And it would work. And it worked significantly because what we did was try to do a value first approach. As we started to discover what SEO can do, discover how the educational component of how we do business is valued, and Google loves it. We decided to start trying to create different content to be able to do that. Obviously, the website and written content was the first place we did that. And then how do we accompany that? I started to make videos when my father-in-law gifted me a camera, and I saw that you could make videos with it, and I'm like, oh, I wonder how well this will work, and then fell in love with that process too because it just allowed me the opportunity to answer the questions people have before they ever talk to me. And I think that's something that we lose in when we're discussing insurance with our customers is sometimes they have a ton of questions and really they just want the answer to that very specific question, and then it opens doors to the rest of the work that we do as far as educating them on risk management, helping them understand how maybe that question was only a small part of a larger picture, or even just satisfying that need. Small business owners are always looking to get that need satisfied, and if we can be there for them and at the same time help their businesses thrive by giving them good information, um, that's where video kind of it worked for us, because I always tell my customers that insurance is not a security blanket. There are no good hands, no good friends. Insurance is a contract, and you should really think about it like a hammer. It's only as good as you learn to use it, and if you use it right, it will help your business, continuity, forever, essentially. And so that's how we try to help them, and they found us because we were trying to do that for them.
So how long are your videos usually?
So I have currently, and it's taken years to develop the idea of it. So I have currently three different kinds of videos. So I'll do non-insurance content, which is usually 2 to 7 minutes, and it's something that we call the small business coffee break, and we interview professionals. Insurance agents tend to be the poor man's attorney. We get calls with questions that we have absolutely no business answering. And so I started to realize that I wasn't really prepared to answer all those questions. So as a value piece, I started interviewing lawyers and accountants and executive coaches and cybersecurity professionals about those questions we would get asked. And so those are usually 2 to 7 minutes answering a specific question, nothing to do with insurance. Then I have the other end of the spectrum, which is usually somewhere between 7 and 15 minutes, which is pure insurance stuff, right? Like, so you have a question about what general liability insurance is, about how loading and unloading might work, or what garage liability might be, or how damage to rented premises works on your policy, or why does your landlord ask for an additional insured? All those kinds of questions, and I put those out there, long form, and we use short bits and pieces of it for additional mediums like LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, but the long form was really the intent, right? Because we get uh, the people who are looking for that information. They'll sit there and they'll watch. I have one particular video that gets most of our views, and it's general liability in 10 minutes or less. It's actually 11 minutes long, and it has a watch time of 60%. So people on average will watch 6 minutes about me talking about general liability insurance, and
Wow.
that's how much need there is for that information out there. And then additionally, in the middle, I have what I call the kind of midway content, and those are shorts, less than 30 seconds. I give a random kind of uh, unique fact about the industry to hopefully change some paradigms. I do it dressed as with funny glasses. I'm using a different voice to do it, but the idea being that insurance isn't just all the stuffiness. So try to capture all three spectrums.
Yeah, this sounds like a really fun creative outlet for you, um, and something you've become kind of passionate about. How did that? You mentioned, you received this camera, but how did the process go from tinkering with that camera to now this pretty specific strategic set of content types?
Well, because at first it was fun, right? So at first it's like, oh wow, I get to do this kind of cool thing. I get to be on YouTube. I mean, when my kids discovered I have a YouTube channel, I was a hero in their eyes. Like they are constantly asking me what my subscriber count is. I'm like, subscriber count doesn't matter. It's a vanity metric. No, I don't say that. But I mean, it's the at the end of the day, it was invigorating to be a part of this, at the time, kind of new process. And there were a lot of voices in the industry helping us do this. If you go back to Agency Nation, the Big I, when they first started putting out that kind of content, Ryan Hanley, Joy Giangola, Sid Rowe, they were begging us as an industry to start doing this because there was so much opportunity to capture attention. What
Mhm.
eventually ended up occurring was that it went from just kind of, hey, this is a creative outlet to, oh, wait, we can really do something specific and strategic with this.
Yeah.
And so it started to morph into, well, how can I capture attention where I'm both providing value to the end user while at the same time creating opportunities for our business? And so then, through trial and error for, different kinds of ideas, which is, probably never end. That ebb and flow will, that's creating content. That's kind of the way it works. It never really finishes. We've come up with a strategy that we feel that will hold serve for at least the next, couple of years so that we can both give out that value and at the same time generate attention for our agency, which turns into revenue. A lot of folks ask me that question. It's like, oh, does it work? And the answer is yeah, yeah, it does. Our website generates 40 to 60 leads a month, of all inbound people who are looking for a very specific kind of insurance, and they fill out long form web forms in order to tell us all of that information. And then additionally, it gives me an opportunity to, while I'm networking face to face in my local community or at other events. I mean, sometimes it's really kind of weird when someone walks up to me and is like, "Oh, you're the coffee guy." And I'm like, yeah, yeah, I'm the coffee guy, because of the small business coffee break. And so, it gave us an opportunity. We saw that the creative outlet actually lends itself very, very well to what we do every day inside our agency.
In some ways, it makes people feel like they know you before they've ever met you. So when that guy walks up to you, or business owner walks up to you, oh, you're the coffee guy, they instantly have a little bit of rapport, a little bit of trust, a sense of who you are, right? Because it sounds like, while you've developed different styles of content, you're always you.
Well, that was
And
so the
can you
reason.
talk a little bit about that, sort of bringing your authentic self into the process?
That's probably the hardest part. Of the three that I do, probably the most me is the insurance nerd Alex, the one who does the shorts.
Yeah.
Because I am a nerd by nature, and so that's actually kind of a way to get all that out. And it was really important for us, and it's important that I say that. A lot of times people see my face all the time. I am a partner in an agency with my father, and this has been developed together over all these years. And it was really important to us that all of our content be unique to us,
Hmm.
because what we didn't want to provide was the idea of a process or an idea of a culture that was not realized when the customer called in.
Yeah.
We felt that disconnect was something that you see a lot in our industry, right? So you take some of the national brands that are advertising, they sell an idea which is not necessarily realized when the phone call is made or when the claim happens. And so we wanted to be able to have a better hold on that. So it was always really important to us to be who we are. And through that, we've learned that we're not for everybody, and that's okay. Not every small business owner is looking to be educated about insurance, and that's okay. That's what makes them a small business owner. They are risk takers by nature. They did not, decide one morning to risk all of their livelihood to open this thing that they are likely passionate about, only because, hey, this is the safest thing in the world. It's like, oh no, they decided to take a risk. And
Yeah.
so we find the customers that are looking to mitigate some of that risk, some of that unexpected physical damages and liability issues that come into their world, but also extend it beyond that to a thought process of insurance isn't the solution for everything.
What advice would you give a small, uh, an agency owner who's looking to build out their own content strategy and maybe is new to building content for the internet?
Well, the two things that I think that were hardest for me, right? So I'll let them know the things that were hard for. So one, it doesn't seem like it, but I am an introvert. Right? I am happiest in a movie theater by myself on a Saturday. That is my happy place. Uh, and so it took something about me to to shift a little to be able to get comfortable on camera. One of the
Yeah.
things I did was I literally started talking to my camera before and after I'd like right before I'd into a car, right after I got into a car. I just pick up my phone and I'd look at my camera and I'd start talking to it like I was talking to another person. And it took a little while, but then eventually I got comfortable at doing that. And
Huh.
so once I got comfortable about doing that, it really became easy to talk about the things I already know about. I
Yeah.
only talk about things that I know something about. If I don't know about it, I'm not going to bring it up. And the reality is that there are so many facets to the insurance industry that people have questions on, that you could talk endlessly about what you know that helps them. So then, the other thing is you might see, that I have some stuff in this office. That, that you might see some of the equipment I use. It took years to build up to that point. My first attempt was a DSLR. It was a Nikon D5300. It was a gift from someone, and I literally just turned it on with God's light, meaning a window, and talked to it. And it looked terrible. It looked terrible, but my best performing video on YouTube is one of those videos. It is 5 years old. And it was, I did by then I had gotten like a little green screen, which is very easy to do with today's technology. And I just talked about general liability for 10 minutes and people eat it up. And so at the very end of that video, I put in a bunch of bloopers that I did while making that video, because I wanted to constantly remind myself that it isn't easy, but you can still do it, right? So that would be my biggest recommendation: is just pick up a camera. Your smartphone is perfect for it. Start talking to it and talk about something that interests you.
So you mentioned that you have sort of built up a recording studio in your office. That's what it sounds like. So what was that process like? Did you started with that gift camera, and then what were some of the most essential pieces you ended up bringing into your collection as you got going?
So yes, so a little bit of YouTube research, and there's no better way to learn how to be on YouTube than YouTube. Uh, Taught me that sound was important.
Hmm.
So early on, I invested in some mics. Um, doesn't have to be expensive. Uh, my current setup uh, is, out the door probably costs about $3,500, which sounds like a lot of money and is a lot of money. But if you take into effect that it's taken me 5 years to put it all together, it really isn't that much. So mics was the first thing I invested in, just because it was very evident that if you sounded like
Yeah.
if you were in a echo chamber or something,
Yeah, it's terrible.
it was hard to capture people's attention. That's something that just turned them off. After that was, I learned a little bit about lighting. I started to create a, an environment that I can easily shoot in, right? So at first, my office was this big office with these big desks and a credenza and like all the all the stuff you normally see in an office. And then the functional kind of practical side of my brain started to say, this is extra. I don't need all of this fancy stuff for validation. So I got rid of it all and then made space and created a back wall. And then originally it was just a bookcase with some things that my kids made me, or pictures of my wedding or things like that. And then eventually that turned into the wall you see now. And I have the kids stuff and on this side and on this side of my office. And this is my office. This is not a studio. It is a 10 by 11 square foot space with my desk pushed all the way up to one wall so that the wall behind me is seen as brightly as possible. So when I am shooting videos, not just for YouTube or on a podcast, but I shoot videos as an introduction to my customers. So if I'm sending them a quote, I do a quick vidyard explaining what that quote is, include that into my email and send it out. And this is what they see. They get a picture of who I am, essentially, visually, and that matters. Sometimes the conversation about insurance is like the last 2 minutes of the conversation.
I'm starting to feel inspired. I feel like I should be shooting videos and sending them to people. Well, did you do that before the epidemic and before things were so remote, or is that a newer process in the last few years for you?
We tried to include it prior to the pandemic, right? So prior to the lockdowns, a better way of I think describing
Yeah.
that. Prior to the lockdown, we've always had an onboarding that allowed customers to see who they're dealing with if they hadn't seen us yet, right? And then beyond the onboarding process, we did try to include video as a part of it. The difference really is adoption. People today will watch that way more than they did
Hmm.
prior to. So essentially we were very blessed to be prepared for this
Yeah.
kind of communication and being able to easily just, shift over to it.
Yeah. Well, and that makes sense just thinking about the life of a small business owner, right? It is a hectic life. It is a
It's
hectic life with long days a lot of the time, and you need answers when you need them. And anytime you can cut things short and make things more efficient, the better. But that doesn't mean you want to lose that connection, that
or
relationship,
that value, correct.
and
You
that
don't you don't you
value.
want making it efficient is only a process issue.
Yeah.
But the value of what we do, the value of what an independent agent brings to the table isn't lost in the process because we can offer it digitally, through video, through content and things like that. I'm always, every time I get a new subscriber to the newsletter, my brain like just explodes. I'm like, who would want to receive a monthly blogs about insurance? That's crazy. But there's people who have that need, and because of that connection that they feel, they want to continue that. And first video was in 2016. My first YouTube video was in 2016, um, and it took probably till about 2018 or 2019 until it started to really get any attention or any traction, and then it just started to go almost as if by itself. So it lends to that reality that you don't know what people want to know. um, just put the information out there and eventually that audience will find it. And additionally, it just, if you put it there, it may not do traction today. You may have to spend a lot of time not seeing an ROI up front,
Hmm.
but you didn't see an ROI when you opened your business. You mentioned that, we're independent insurance agents, especially agency owners, we're small business owners. People ask me,
Yeah.
what do I do for a living? I go, depends on the time of day. Sometimes I'm an IT guy. Occasionally I'm a janitor. And every so often I actually get to talk about insurance. And so that's the way our lives work.
So, how did you kind of nurture your own process in those early years?
It did take faith, right? I believed in the statistics, right? So we have been doing SEO since way before
Yeah.
2016. So the power of what the internet can do over time, as far as search engine algorithms are concerned, was evident to us. And people don't always realize that YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world, right? So you Google it or you YouTube a solution for it.
Yeah.
So it just seemed natural to want to do it there, but that because we had had the first experience, we knew the second experience would take some time. I have a good friend who owns a media company, and we were going back and forth, and she was mentioning how she doesn't for how much she enjoys my content, she doesn't understand why it doesn't get more subscribers or more of the vanity metrics that exist. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, it's because I'm talking about insurance. I mean, let's be honest, I'm not like, a cool momtrepreneur who's like, out there doing jogging or making some kind of cool food or building some kind of awesome thing. I'm talking about probably the subject most people when people meet you at a party and you say you're an insurance agent, that ends the conversation like just
Yep.
right there. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a need. So my viewer isn't going to subscribe, but they're going to find the answer to that question. And if I did my job right with the call to action, they're then going to reach out.
Yep.
And that's my end goal.
It's not about catching the attention of the whole world. It's about having the right people being able to find you at the right moment when they have the kind of question that you can answer, or are thinking about their business in a certain way where you can be immediately valuable
Absolutely.
to them, right? And about finding that connection.
And not only, and I think that in that, one other thing that we try really hard to do is to not ever think about any of the content we build on an insurance mindset. We
Mm.
think about it from the customer's perspective. One of
Yeah.
the things I used to do way back in the day when we had a storefront was I would sit in the seats my customers would sit in from when they would walk in to kind of get a view of what they saw. Think about your content the same way.
Awesome. Well, this has been fabulous. Thank you so much for joining us today. I feel like we could talk all day, but I feel like we probably should let you go. So thanks again for joining us, and really look forward to catching you on YouTube.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us today and listening to And I Quote, a podcast created by Coterie Insurance for insurance agents, brokers, and small business owners just like yourself. And I Quote focuses on how building relationships, networking, and community involvement can grow your business. Coterie Insurance is simplifying small business insurance for agents, brokers, and our partners. New to our website is the Find an Agent tab. This tab leads to local pages that help small business owners find agents in their area. If you're interested in getting your own page, click the link in our show notes. Thanks again for listening, and don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next week.